In 2010, there was several attacks by sharks in Sharm el-Sheikh, which is a resort town in the Red Sea in Egypt. And some Egyptian authorities, after a thorough investigation, concluded that the sharks were actually Zionist sharks. But I know it sounds funny, but you could just Google it. And so, because one of the ways by which Israel can attack their neighbors is by damaging them economically. And of course, the way you do that in this case is to make it scary for tourists to swim in that resort town. And so even the sharks are Zionist pigs. I'd like to begin with I'm very big on analogies, especially from biology. So let me compare Jew hatred to the immune system, the human immune system. So the human immune system did not evolve to only kill a specific set of pathogens. Because if it only evolved to only tackle pathogen P1, P2, and P3, once the pathogen mutates, which it's very good at doing, then you would be screwed. Because if there are no degrees of freedom in your immune system, you can't build up a response to a new pathogen. And therefore, the immune system has evolved adaptability as an adaptation, as an evolutionary adaptation. I argue that Jew hatred, in a sinister way, is akin to the immune system in that it ever so evolves into new variants of Jew hatred. And so I'd like to mention here, I put together this list earlier today. So Jews, of course, are the killers of Christ. In Islam, Jews are descendants of pigs and monkeys. They're actually, the Arabic word is najis. Najis means impure. So the Jew is like urine, is like vomit, is like feces. They are impure. So that's from Islamic canons. Of course, we've got the blood libel. Jews make, matzah ball soup and so on with the goy's blood. Protocols of the learned elders of Zion. There's world domination of Jews. That's how we parasitize the world. Jews have no singular loyalty to the host nation. They have dual loyalty. Hitler said that Jews are literally a disease on the body politic of the Aryan nation. They are vermin and parasites. We now have the great replacement theory. Jews are the ones who control all of Western immigration. Some of you may have heard me mention that when I put up a clip on social media showing the names of all of the rapists in Britain, over 250,000 British white girls have been raped over the past 30 plus years all over England by Muslims, typically Pakistani Muslims. The response that I get is, what's your point? That's caused because of Jews. I said, how is it that it's Jews that are to blame for Muhammad and Muhammad gang raping your daughter? And the answer is, who let them in, Jew? So even when 3 Muhammads gang rape your daughter, it's Mordechai who's to blame. Of course, Jews also spread the bubonic plague, right? The Black Death in Europe. Jews spread COVID and also profiteered from the COVID vaccine. So on both ends, we were diabolical. Now, this one you may not know, although I have mentioned it recently on several shows. In 2010, there was several attacks by sharks in Sharm el-Sheikh, which is a resort town in the Red Sea in Egypt. And some Egyptian authorities, after a thorough investigation, concluded that the sharks were actually Zionist sharks. But I know it sounds funny, but you could just Google it. And so, because one of the ways by which Israel can attack their neighbors is by damaging them economically. And of course, the way you do that in this case is to make it scary for tourists to swim in that resort town. And so even the sharks are Zionist pigs. The Frankfurt School, I don't know if any of you know what the Frankfurt School is. Many of the parasitic ideas that I discuss in one of my earlier books, postmodernism, cultural relativism, and so on. Unfortunately, some of them were actually promulgated by Jewish professors, and therefore all of the world's ills that we're seeing today are due to the Jews. Communism, we have Karl Marx, a Jew, and so it becomes very, very easy to always connect the dots to the evil, diabolical Jew. Now, anti-Zionism is simply the latest mutated form of a long-standing Jew-hating virus. And so, again, you see the analogy with the immune system, how it mutates. Now, last Monday, actually, almost a week ago, I appeared for the 12th time on Joe Rogan's show I don't know if many of you have had a chance to go and listen to it. When you go on Joe's show, you never really know what you're going to talk about. You could end up talking about, mating behavior of Sasquatch. I mean, literally, it's a very organic, free flowing conversation. But I had, of course, hoped that we would spend quite a bit of time discussing my latest book, Suicidal Empathy. Can I engage in a tiny bit of gloating? Number one in Canada across all books, and number 9 globally. And the books that are ahead of it are like How to Train Your Dragon and How to Love Your Caterpillar. So from real books, it's actually number 1. Thank you. But despite the fact that it's number 1 in Canada, apparently my home university is not very distressed at the fact that, dare I say, their most illustrious professor is now moving to the United States. That gives you a sense of how different two entities can view the same stimulus, in this case, me. The United States says, we want you here to be on our team. Canada says, get out, Jew. Probably not a good thing. Okay, so then I wanted to talk a bit about suicidal empathy for those of you who may not be familiar with it, and I'll try to link it to some issues relating to anti-Zionism. Empathy is a beautiful virtue to have. As a matter of fact, we are a social species. Therefore, we are expected to have empathy as a social lubricant, right? For you and I to have a meaningful conversation, I need to put myself in your mind, and you need to do the same with me. That's called cognitive empathy or theory of mind. So empathy is a beautiful thing. But like Aristotle explained to us several thousand years ago, all good things in moderation. He called it the golden mean. He specifically spoke about courage and how courage follows the golden mean. If you are a soldier and you are incredibly cowardly, hence you don't exhibit any courage, that's not a good thing. If you're a soldier and you exhibit too much reckless courage, then you'll probably die very quickly. The optimal point is somewhere in the middle. Yes? And that's called the inverted U. Too little, not good. Too much, not good. And the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. And so, of course, what I argue in the book is that that exactly applies to empathy as well. If you have no empathy, you're likely a psychopath. But if you have too much empathy, as we see now, so suicidal empathy is comprised of 3 parts. It hyperactivates, it hyperfires, it is invoked in the wrong situation, and it targets the wrong targets. So Guatemalan illegal immigrants deserve more empathy than American vets. Repeat felons deserve more empathy than their victims. Rapists deserve, especially if they're rapists of color, then we really have to be empathetic. And the reason for that is because that rapist was born into a white supremacist society. So he's already been marginalized. He's already been punished. So for you to be so mean and non-empathetic as to now put him in prison simply is not kind. Try to be kinder, right? And so what I do in the book is I go through many, many of these examples, but now let's link it to issues related to Israel. And I'd like to hear mention some of the worst anti-Zionists, the most execrable of all anti-Zionists. Those are Jewish anti-Zionists. And I'd like to talk about them. I'd like to talk about them using another one of my viral terms. Apparently, I have an uncanny ability to create new terms that then sort of go viral. Wood cricket Jews. Some of you have heard me mention that term, but for those of you who don't know what it refers to, let me explain it. And it actually explains why I use the neuroparasitological framework. So in the animal kingdom, when you study parasitology, parasitology is the study of parasite-host interactions. So a tapeworm is a parasite, but it parasitizes your intestinal tract. A neuroparasite is a parasite that needs to get ultimately to the host's brain, altering its circuitry to suit its interests. Now, a wood cricket, an actual wood cricket, abhors water. It wants nothing to do with water. But when it is parasitized by a hairworm, the hairworm needs the wood cricket to jump into water, merrily commit suicide, hence suicidal empathy, because that would suit the reproductive interest of the hairworm, because it can only complete its reproductive cycle in water. So that hapless wood cricket, once its brain is hijacked by this hairworm, it is simply a vessel for the interests of the hairworm. It no longer has personal agency. Well, wood cricket Jews are exactly a manifestation of that wood cricket. And let me give you a few examples. Let me start with the biggest of the degenerate wood crickets. Anybody want to take a guess who I might say? Who? Peter Beinart is a good one. I despise him, but no. Gabor Mate. See, Gabor Mate is so empathetic. He's so enlightened. He's such a philosopher of addiction that, by the way, he's a Holocaust survivor. In that, when he was 6 months old, he was taken and placed in another home to be protected from the Nazis. But 6 months old infants are not cognizant beings. So it really is a stretch to argue that I'm a Holocaust survivor. If he is a Holocaust survivor, then I too am a Holocaust survivor, because in the 1940s, I was swimming in my dad's testicles as a spermatozoa. So not only am I a childhood war refugee of Lebanon, I too am a Holocaust survivor. Now, the way he uses that narrative, which is it's very intelligent, it's duplicitous, it's Machiavellian, but it works, old infant. So you should listen to me and believe me. So this is what a wood cricket is. Let me give you two other Jewish wood crickets. One, well, both of them not very known, but they exemplify the same kind of reflex. Tal Nitzan is a Jewish wood cricket. I discussed this example not in suicidal empathy, but in the parasitic mind. She was a doctoral student at Hebrew University and she's Jewish. She wanted to demonstrate that the IDF engages in rampant rape of Palestinian women. So she went out very assiduously trying to collect the data to document that the IDF soldiers are, rampant rapists. Well, she wasn't and by the way, she spoke to also Palestinian women. So it's not as though she just went to the IDF and said, hey, tell me, do you rape women? And so after she did all of her research, she wasn't able to identify a single instance of IDF raping Palestinian women. So now an honest purveyor of the truth, someone who is a true scientist, would say, okay, I proposed the hypothesis, the data didn't support it, so be it. Sometimes it happens. But she has to be wedded to the fact that Israel is truly a cancer to the world. And she's Jewish, living in Israel, studying at Hebrew University. So you know what she concluded? She said, aha, the fact that the IDF soldiers did not rape even a single woman, Palestinian woman, demonstrates how much they despise the Palestinians, that they weren't even worthy of being raped. Yeah. So now, sorry to get professorial on you for 2 seconds. Karl Popper, the famous philosopher of science, proposed what's called the falsification principle, that anything that is scientific, there needs to be data that could potentially falsify the theory. If there's no way for you to falsify a theory, then it is not within the realm of science. And let me give you a concrete example of that. The concept of destiny is not within the realm of science, because you cannot falsify the concept of destiny. Why? Let's suppose I tell you I'm going to walk outside right now and I'm going to see if a car hits me as I cross the street. Well, if I cross the street and the car doesn't hit me, that was my destiny. If I cross the street and the car hits me, that was my destiny. Therefore, there is no data that would ever invalidate the fact that what is my destiny. Therefore, destiny is unfalsifiable. What Tal Nitzan did is exactly that. If the IDF soldiers raped Palestinian women, that is proof of how evil Israel and its soldiers are. If the IDF did not rape anybody, that demonstrates how evil in their othering of the Palestinian women. So it is a real parasitic idea. I'm not sure what is the way to solve it, but for those of you in the room, I hope none of you are ever angry at me because I maintain a relationship with Joe Rogan and so on. By the way, nothing upsets me more when Jews write to me angrily when I have to walk around all day long being protected for defending Jewish people. And usually the argument goes something like this. Why are you still friends with Joe Rogan when he's speaking to all sorts of, anti-Zionist freaks? Well, because Joe Rogan is courteous enough to invite me on his show so that I can have a conversation with him that will be consumed by 20 million people. There's a pragmatism here. If I were to disassociate myself from Joe Rogan because he speaks to some imbecile, and I disassociate myself from Elon Musk because he allows neo-Nazi accounts to be on, on X, and so on and so forth, I will end up speaking to very few people, maybe my wife and children, and that's about it. So to all of the astoundingly lobotomized and moronic Jews who send me those hate, perhaps reserve that hate to the people who truly want to kill you, as opposed to the ones who are standing tall to try to protect you and your children.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this: you can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real. It is stored safely. It is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.